Well, how often as a child were you asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? Perhaps it is something that you have asked the youth who are in your life. We're coming to the end of a school year when students are making transitions to school or to jobs or internships or the next school. And there is a sense that they are setting out on a pathway to whatever future they might imagine for themselves. You'd think I could get this figured out after 26 years, eh? All right, let's try this again. I've hardly any body parts left that work. You'd think we could get some amplifier. So we're at a time of year when people are thinking about, what do you want to do? Where do you want to go? What do you want to be? Who do you want to be? Meanwhile, I was at a meeting the other day that began with two of the women in the room saying, this is not exactly what I thought retirement would be like. I wonder if any of us can resonate with that. This is not exactly how I thought life would be. I didn't plan to be a caregiver or a patient, for that matter. I didn't plan to be a widow or divorced or this kind of parent. I didn't expect to have this job or live in this place or be as busy or as lonely or as limited or as concerned or as whatever the thing is. You can fill in the blank. I often think that the phrase best laid plans is the most useful idiom we have, for even the most meticulous planning seems it cannot guarantee success, or it certainly doesn't get us where we thought we were going. Whether it's your personal or community life, whether it's your private or our public world, when are those moments when you turn around and wonder, how did I get here? I'm thinking about this in particular because of the story we heard today from John's Gospel. And it's funny to be reading it in the season of Easter because it is from the time just before Jesus died. Jesus is trying to help his disciples understand how they got to where they were, but even more trying to prepare them for what is probably going to happen next. And we're eavesdropping on a moment in time when the circumstances for Jesus' followers, not that great. They were considered troublemakers at this point by those in power. There was an active plot in the works to get rid of Jesus. And among them, the divisions were kind of starting to show. The cracks were appearing. So Jesus had already agreed to betray Judas, did I say Judas? So Judas had already agreed to betray Jesus. Jesus had already confronted him about it, although not everybody understood what he was saying but Judas did. And they're all kind of in hiding, and Jesus had warned his friends that danger was kind of at the door, and that some of them were about to discover that they couldn't remain loyal through what was to come, Peter in particular. And so he said this, he's kind of laid out the doom and gloom, and then says, but don't let your hearts be troubled. If you say so, Jesus, that's easier said than done, wouldn't you think? I think most of us might relate more to the reaction of Thomas to that, who says, okay, we don't know where you're going. How can we possibly know the way? We cannot pretend to understand where God is in the midst of personal and global crises. We cannot pretend to know the way when our lives don't look like anything we planned for when we thought we were walking away. Then again, I wonder if the power of these words from Jesus comes precisely because they are spoken in moments of intense vulnerability, when things are not going their way. Because Jesus is speaking with the full knowledge that death and grief are ahead. He may not know exactly what, but he knows it's going to be bad. It's going to be worse before it gets better. And the Gospel of John was written for the earliest Christian communities who were also living precarious lives, anxious for words of encouragement and consolation, because for them, persecution was also right at the door. And in the midst of all that, we hear Jesus' words, "Don't be troubled." And yet, for many years, the Christian church has done kind of a disservice to Jesus' words in this chapter, because we have read them not as comfort and encouragement for difficult times, but as those who were actually doing fine, thank you very much, who were already confident in their security and in their power. And so the church, in its confidence, looked at these instructions from Jesus as those who think they have cornered the market on the way and the truth and the life. And so the Christian church are other people out. No one gets to God through me, it says. But what if? What if we read them again as those who cannot say for certain how we got where we are? The Moravian scholar Lindsay Scott notes, more than a charge to kind of get it together and put on a brave face, there's a permission that is given by Jesus to admit that we cannot control all of the stuff that troubles us, to seek comfort without a false sense of security. And then we hear Jesus say, it's okay. Think of it as a house with a lot of rooms. And there is room for everyone in God's love, even you. And that's what's going to get us through what we're going to encounter. And when I'm gone, you will know what you need to do. And that's when Thomas pipes up, Thomas who actually says all the things we're thinking, to say, wait, hang on, we don't know the way. We don't have a clue what we're doing. How are we going to know where to go? And Jesus says, yes, you do, because I am the way. You don't have to go anywhere else. You don't have to look anywhere else. You're already on the path. Scholars agree that the key word as a condemnation to other religions is off the mark. It doesn't match what Jesus would have meant by that statement. Instead, it was meant to reinforce to Jesus' followers that they didn't need to find another way or another direction, that their connection that they already had was all that they needed. It reminds me of an interview I heard recently with the actor Noah Wyle, who was asked what kind of advice he might have given his 20-year-old self. You know, the one that thought he knew where he was going and how he was going to get there. And Noah's answer was that his advice would be what he tells young people today who ask his advice, about acting and being successful. And what he says to them is that they need to stop thinking about what they're doing as a springboard to something else. Often when we're on a path to where we're thinking we want to go, we imagine that we need to use each experience as a sort of springboard that we will jump off of in order to try and reach the next and higher springboard. But he says by leaping off to the next exciting or shiny thing, we miss out on what the present circumstance has to give us. And sometimes we crash spectacularly. What if, he says, we stop thinking about springboards, and what if instead we imagined that we were on surfboards, where we can ride the wave, stay the course, and see where the board we're on takes us? Clearly, Jesus wouldn't have had familiarity with springboards or surfboards, but I think that's kind of what he's getting at when he's talking to Thomas. Don't think that this is some sort of springboard that you now must leap off as I go away to find your next step. Ride the surfboard you're already on. It'll carry you through the waves. See where it takes you. It won't avoid the pitfalls of suffering or grief. That's not the point. But you will have something to ride as you encounter the waves. In fact, isn't that entirely what surfboards are built for? Navigating the waves? And what is it that will keep us afloat? Well, Jesus says, a deep, abiding presence in and with God. That's what you need. A connection to God that's going to flow through you in such a way that you can share it with the world in even a broader way than was shown through Jesus. Well, then Philip jumps in on Thomas's argument. He's been emboldened because Thomas said it first. And he says, okay, I just need a little bit more. We'll go with you on this, he says, but could you just kind of give us a glimpse of the destination? Like, where are we going? Show us this God who's abiding in us and with us, so then we'll really know what to do. And Jesus responds with a little frustration. After all that we have done together, you still haven't made the connection? I show you what God's love looks like all of the time. You've seen it. We see it every day. You can see it. You know this. And so whether or not I'm physically with you, you can still see it if you look. Just do what we've been doing. This is what I'm trying to say to you about the path and the truth and the energy of life. You know that love conquers death. You know that light shines in the darkness. You know that love will find a way. And John's readers, who have the advantage of knowing what happens next, have the resurrection as a reminder that love can find a way. And think about us, who we have the benefit of so much hindsight. We know how the story ends. We know what happened with Jesus' followers, with John's followers. We have so much hindsight. So we also know that God has this way of finding a pathway through death to life if we're willing to stay the course and not leap off like we're on some sort of springboard. Elijah was pointing at the baptismal font and mentioned the royal visit that happened back in 1939. Well, there's a royal visit happening in North America this week in the United States. And this week, King Charles delivered a speech to the United States lawmakers in which he said, "For many here, and for myself, the Christian faith is a firm anchor and daily inspiration that guides us not only personally, but together as members of our community. And having devoted a large part of my life to interfaith relationships," he says, "and greater understanding, it is the faith in the triumph of light over darkness which I have found, confirmed countless times." That's what Jesus is saying. You've found it, you've seen it, it's confirmed, believe it. I would concur. Think of the moments when you have seen light shining through. Think of the moments when you have witnessed God at work in your life or the world. You know you have. You know it's there. Do you remember the 2001 animated fairy tale, alternative fairy tale called Shrek? I know it's a long time ago, but 2001. But at the end of the movie, the orchestra score swells, the blinding burst of light comes and goes, and there's this transformative moment when Princess Fiona, who's an ogre, becomes dun, 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 exactly who she already was. She does not change at all. We may not be where we thought we were going, but that doesn't mean we're in the wrong place. We may not have become entirely different people, but that does not mean we are not who we are meant to be. Indeed, our calling, as Michael Cray puts it, is to live in such a way that the pattern of Jesus' life, his love, his mercy, his self-giving, his trust in God, becomes visible again here and now. Not because we have figured everything out, not because it will keep us from harm, not because we know where we're going, but because we have seen enough. Our GPS is just fine. It will not lead us where we expect, no doubt. In fact, we might wish to let go of our need to know exactly where we're going because we don't know, but love will find a way. No, let me try that again. As Jesus said, love is the way. So, let us be who we are and let us find God's way together. Amen.